Hey, how's it going, guys? This is your boy Hazzed, and today we're going to be doing the 7.0.3 level 100 talent slash rotation guide and what macros you guys should be using, so there's no confusion about patch day today. Because obviously they changed up the abilities and, of course, the damage, and also it kind of changes our rotation a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into this and discuss how we're going to go about changing that and what macros to use. Going over the Frost DK talents, guys, we're going to go over the level 56 talents. Basically, we're going to be using Shattering Strikes, which increases your Frost Strike damage by 40%, and it stacks up to 5 times with Razor Ice, and it consumes that when you use it. So you wait for that to stack up, you use another Frost Strike, it hits really, really hard, deals quite a bit of burst damage, and that's why you're using that. Icy Talons can be pretty good for bursting, but you'd have to time it correctly right before your burst. The best time to use that is with this spec, believe it or not, since you can increase your haste and then combine it with a ability later on called Avalanche, which off of melee attacks during burst causes, avalanche, little ice procs to fall down and hit targets, which is pretty cool. As for Murderous Efficiency, basically consuming a killing machine effect has a 50% chance to cause you to gain 1 rune. So it's kind of gambling with that. It's pretty good at 50%. They buffed it up a little bit, as you can see. It's not a half bad talent, but I am actually using a talent that you can pick later on that'll give you more runic power to make up for the downtime right there. So I mean, I would suggest either going with Murderous Efficiency and or Runic Attunement down at level 90, because they kind of feed off each other. You really want to go with one of those so you don't have too much downtime. I mean, if you go with Murderous Efficiency, you may be able to go with Frost Scythe, but Frost Scythe doesn't deal as much damage as Obliterate does anymore. They nerfed it down just slightly, if I remember correctly, but they also nerfed down Frost Strike damage. So I have a feeling that this doesn't hit anywhere near as hard as Obliterate. No, it doesn't, as I'm looking at it now. But it has a chance to deal 4 times normal damage, though. Yeah, but just a regular Obliterate crit's going to still hit for over like 10 to 15k stronger than Frost Sickle, so you don't go down that route too often. So let's jump back up to where we were talking. Where were we talking? We should be up at level 57 talents, I believe. So, Freezing Fog, Howling Blast, and Frost Fever deal 25% increased damage. You can tell that's going to be a lot of our AoE pressure. And, of course, on Howling Blast proc, that's going to be our AoE damage, raw damage, and, of course, just altogether, it's going to increase our damage. So we're definitely going to go with that. Frozen Pulse is cool, but I'd have to say that most of the time you're not rune starved. I mean, you usually have 1 or 2 runes sitting away off a proc that came back, so you're not really sitting runic starved too often as Frost Decay. I feel like Legion is a bit more you spammy abilities, using your abilities a lot more compared to using them a few times and having 8 minutes of downtime, which is really annoying. Now you can spec in a Horn of Winter, which blowing Horn of Winter gains 2 runes and generates 10 runic power, which is an absolutely OP ability, but you're not going to get that insane AoE damage or that pressure off of this ability. Now this is also a runic gain slash rune gain, of course, kind of like Murderous Efficiency and Runic Attune down there. What does that say? I don't even know. I don't even care. Alright, moving on. Alright, so let's see, the level 58 talents, we're not going to go with Ice Cap. That, your Frost Strike and your Obliterate critical strikes reduce the cooldown on Pillar of Frost. It's really not that great. It sounds cool. It'll make your burst shorter, but I really don't like that. Now, if that was running with the Obliteration rotation before, it could have been pretty good, but I'd say as of now, after the nerfs, it's not really that amazing. Hungering Rune Weapon is another runic gain, basically, for consistent DPS, but it replaces Empowered Rune Weapons, so I really do not like using that talent. Yeah, it's not that amazing as far as I'm concerned, because, of course, RE is going to give you all of your runes back, and I believe a little runic power. Yeah, 25 runic power, which can also go towards death strikes. I mean, pretty amazing, but I'd rather have it now than later on. As for an ability, that's why I'm choosing Avalanche. Now, Avalanche increases your burst damage, because when you have Pillar of Frost activated, it causes your melee attacks to basically proc Jagged Ice to fall down on your enemies, dealing AoE pressure to a lot of people around you. So that's a really great thing to have during burst, since a lot of our damage comes from maximizing AoE pressure, as you can see from Freezing Fog, and since we have to use Remorseless Winter, which is a damaging ability now, which is our CC, which comes a little bit later on. is pretty amazing. Level 60 talents, guys, we got Abomination's Might, which I'll probably use for PvE since it stuns the targets off of Obliterate. But as for PvE usage, it just kind of dazes targets, so I won't be using that definitely, since you can spec into Chains of Ice later on with PvP talents, or you can get your slows off of Icy Chains. Blinding Sleet's pretty cool, but it's kind of like a blind. Any damage they take cancels the effect. Chances are, as a Frost DK, you're going to have everything dotted up, and they're just going to break out of it anyways. So it's probably not a very good spec to go for, or talent. Alright, so what we are using right now, it's for mainly PvP, is Winter is Coming, which basically, whenever someone's struck 5 times by your Remorseless Winter while you're blowing cooldowns, you should be popping those around the same time. It's going to catch them in a 4-second stun, which is absolutely amazing, and then you can complete your burst on the target. I mean, it all just kind of consecutively goes together to amplify that one major burst. Let's talk about the level 75 PvP talents. Now, Volatile Shielding basically causes 35% more damage to be absorbed by the shield. Basically, you generate no extra runic power, so you don't get any healing off of it. And when it expires, 25% of all that damage dealt to you is dealt back to the target. Arcane damage, it's pretty good for dealing with casters, so I'd have to say that's definitely a caster one. I like to use Permafrost since a lot of the time you're in melee range, you can get a little absorb shield with your melee damage. I wouldn't say I'd be using that for PvP most of the time, but mainly that's more like a PvE leveling talent, I'd have to say. And then we got White Walker, which, why you're using White Walker, it's White Walker, Wraith Walker, White Walker, yeah, it's White Walker. Wraith Walker is a new ability. Basically, you pop up, you may notice it from like King Leoric's Diablo kind of thing going on. Basically, you move really fast with it. You can't jump around and spin, but you can move really fast in one direction. It also removes slows and impairing effects. So you can get White Walker with that, which will also reduce damage taken by 20% while you're proccing that, which is also pretty good for being pretty defensive in arena when you need to like get out of certain situations. More than likely, I'll either be rocking White Walker, Volatile Shield, and PvP for the most part. Level 90 talent, we got Frostlight. As I said earlier, Frostlight got nerfed down pretty bad. At the start of beta, at least that I was playing, it was really strong, like really strong. I was cutting down like 4 or 5 people at once with it within full cooldown, so they really had to tweak that a bit. Now what I do like to use is Runic Attunement, which auto attacks generate 1 runic power. So over time, I mean, it generates quite a bit of runic power, and chances are you come into situations where you're only missing a few runic power for your death strike, and this really saves your butt sometimes, I'd have to say. And it also keeps up your rotation so you don't have very much downtime, kind of like Murder's Efficiency up there. And alright, let's see here. We got Gathering Storm. Each rune spent during Remorseless Winter increases its damage done by 10% and extends it by 0.5 seconds. I mean, it's not a bad ability, but I'd have to say it's not as important as gathering up that runic power and going for your major burst. Since also auto attacks generate 1 runic power, you can imagine those auto attacks generating runic power during your major burst, which we'll talk about within the next talents. Dropping down to level 100 talents, we got Obliteration. For every 8 seconds, every Frost Strike hit triggers Killing Machine, and Obliterate costs 1 less rune. I mean, it's a pretty good ability, if I'd have to say, for PvE. It was really good for PvP for a while, until the major single target nerfs really took a chunk out of it. As for how good it is right now, it may be pretty good for PvE since it is a 1.5 minute cooldown. I can imagine it might be pretty good for leveling. Alright, so the one talent I do like using, it's on a 2-minute cooldown now, is Breath of Sindragosa. Everyone knows that I got some crazy breath macros I like to use that just blow people up with this. I'll be using it as leveling as well as definitely PvP, but most likely probably leveling too, since I do like to PvP a lot when I'm leveling and blowing people up. But it looks like for PvE, Glacial Advanced will probably be the thing we want to rock, since it deals an insane amount of AoE pressure to targets within like a straight line. You can imagine in PvP, you get people set up right there next to you, you're all DPSing on targets, and you're dropping Glacial Advance, you know, every couple of seconds, and it procs up and hits all the targets and deals a crazy amount of AoE pressure. So that'll be really great for dealing consistency. So let's go ahead and talk about rotation / macros. Right now, guys, the only base macro I'm really using, besides I'd say like my focus macros for arena and things like that, are going to be just the basic breath macro. You've seen it in my older videos. There isn't really much different about it currently, besides I guess I'd take out some of the badges and stuff for PvP, because we won't be using the PvP badges. But as you can see, it's Show Tooltip, Breath of Sindragosa, Cast Pillar of Frost to generate some of that extra strength, throw in a potion, throw in your PvP trinket, and then basically cast sequence reset 120 breath of Sindragosa. That causes after 120 minutes for the ability to reset. Of course, that's the cooldown on breath, so it works perfectly. And then, of course, it uses the obliterates after you spam the button afterwards. I usually switch over to regular rotation sometime between 2 or 3 obliterates with that macro anyways. So I never really complete the macro, so I mean, I don't like to. I like to be able to switch back and then be in more control a little bit later on. So you guys know what macros we're using. Let's go ahead and jump into this rotation. Going into rotation, guys, basically rotation's not that hard. I mean, you can Howling Blast to apply dots first off. I mean, applying dots, remember that. Of course, dots are really important. And then you just go into hitting that obliterate buttons. If you get a Howling Blast proc, you're going to use it. Of course, you get a Obliterate strike, you're going to use it. Howling Blast strike, you're going to use it. And then you're just going to basically get your runic power up, and then you're going to runic dump on somebody using Howling Blast to keep up your runic power. And then, of course, throwing in your Frost strikes using Howling Blast on proc. And then Frost strike, Obliterate when it comes up. And then Howling Blast proc when it comes up, and then back to Frost strikes. Pretty basic rotation, guys. Now, Remorseless Winter, when are you going to use that? You're going to want to use it when you're getting close to bursting, and since it is a 20-second cooldown, you're going to want to use it about 3 times total in between your bursts. So there is times to use it outside of it. So let's say your normal rotation, you're going to throw it up, and you're just going to go into your normal rotation. Nothing outside the ordinary. It's going to hit people for extra AoE damage. It's going to tick. Now, when you're building up your burst with the ability, you're going to want to throw it up right before you pop your one-shot macro, because if you throw up Remorseless Winter right before you pop your one-shot macro, that means your one-shot macro is also going to stun. So I'm going to throw in my one-shot right here, throwing out breath macro once we have full runic power, and then you keep up your normal rotation besides take out Frost strikes while you're using that breath. So use your obliterates, use your Howling Blast procs on the target to get that crazy AoE damage, and then keep using those obliterates and that Howling Blast procs. Throw in a Remorseless Winter if you can last that long through your burst. And if your breath wears off at any point, start dropping Frost strikes, of course, into the rotation. I generally leave my my breath using a Frost strike or two to generate off those full stacks of Razor Ice to increase my burst by a bit at the end of it, causing a pretty crazy amount of pressure. It's one of my secrets to killing a lot of healers, is they expect the breath to end, and then all of a sudden they get hit with a big lump sum of damage, which can be pretty crazy. As for self-survivability, guys, as currently we only have Death Strikes. Death Strikes are only going to heal you for about 40k, it looks like. You take a little bit extra damage, they'll probably heal from 60 to 70k at max. It's pretty weak at this point, I'd have to say, guys. Once we get our artifact later on, and we get the talent that'll allow us, when we use Icebound Fortitude, to increase our Death Strike healing by almost like 200%. It'll basically give us a Death Pact worthy heal for survivability, so keep that in mind, because right now, guys, I'd have to say Frost DKs are definitely one of the worst dueling wise, especially because we don't have our honor talents. We need Chill Streak, we need Death Chill. Heartstopper Roya works really well with Frost. Cadaverous Pillar when you're dueling some kind of casters. I mean, there's a lot of things we're missing when it comes in terms of PvP, so don't feel too down about Frost currently, guys, because it's still a good spec when it comes to dealing damage and stuff, and as long as you have a healer behind you, you're doing fine. But as far as self-survivability as well as keeping yourself alive, it's going to be a struggle throughout the level 100, I'd have to say, pre-patch right now, guys. But all in all, I'd have to say you guys are really going to enjoy Frost. Frost has a really fun rotation. You'll probably really enjoy it when it comes to leveling. And as far as I know, guys, we still have one of the craziest single target pressured bursts out of most classes, I'd have to say. Like, look at that. Look at that. Get that damage out there. But as far as survivability wise, like I was saying earlier, we definitely are going to be lacking in that currently. So don't be too discouraged about that, guys. Until, you know, of course, we get artifacts level 110. And, of course, we pump out some of them PvP talents. I'll definitely be doing update videos for that. I just want to do a quick live update to help people that are kind of confused. It looks like a lot of people are spamming, I don't know how to play my character, what's going on, what am I supposed to be doing. I literally had so many Real ID whispers when I logged on this morning, I couldn't even reply to them. There were so many asking, the same question about talents and rotation. So I just thought I'd go ahead and give you guys the quick down low on that. Yes, Death Siphon no longer exists, so don't expect any range heals. But that's going to be it for this little pre-patch video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the explanations on the talents, and I hope this helped you out when you log in and feel a little confused. So go ahead and hit that like button if you enjoyed this video or it helped you out, guys. And until next time, this was your boy Hazzed.